We're going to transition now to our panel discussion. And I think we have two of the speakers, Chislin and Sam in the audience, and the rest of us will be online virtually. Thank you for the organizers for making this possible to have a hybrid panel. I know we're getting close to lunchtime too, so we may not get to all the questions, but I would love to hear from each of our panelists a little bit about what influenced your interest in ethics and mapping and your focus on empathy. We heard a little bit about your journeys in your presentations, but I'd love to ask the panel, everybody, the same question. So we'll just go in the order of the presentations, and if you could take a minute or so. Chislin, do you want to say, is this something you've been thinking about all of your career, or was there something that came up that really hit home to you?
Thanks for the question. Thanks to my co-presenters. I wish that you were all here together. I've been trying to meet Clinton for a long time, so I was disappointed. But I would say this is it is not something I've thought about for my whole career. I really started out, passionate about pattern, I'd say. But as I transitioned to a leadership role at Arizona State University, it was a very strange time for me personally. Going from Canada to the US in 2016. I moved just before the election, which was such a confusing time, I think, for a Canadian in the US. And I was in charge of a much larger school than I had been involved with before, and it was more diverse. And the range of challenges that people faced were just a lot more than I had to address and maybe even be aware of. I remember have a student, it was just after the election, I had a student quit showing up to class, and we couldn't figure out why. This was a student that had always been very engaged and had good grades. And it turned out she was a Muslim student, and someone had driven by her house and thrown rocks through her window. And her father was very scared and didn't want the kids going to school for that period of time. And coming from Victoria, Canada, I was so confused, and I was put into a position where I had some responsibility for how the school responded to that. And it required me to dig deep and learn a lot. And so, I think, and then some of the other things that happened, I think that made it more focused, brought it out as more of a focus of my research was some of the interaction with this next generation of researchers, I think. But I also want to express gratitude to Dawn for working on this paper with me. I've learned a lot from working with her. And Clinton, I think it was when I first met Jack Dangerman, he asked me to meet with Clinton, and Clinton has taught me a ton. And I just want to express a lot of gratitude for the support that I've received even from this community along my journey. I'm really grateful.
Great. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think hearing personal stories and just learning, talking to each other is invaluable. Sam, do you have kind of an experience to share?
I don't think I can necessarily point to a single situation that was maybe the moment, but I think I've always been a bit critical of my own data representativeness, and I can picture parts of graduate school taking geopolitics classes and learning about the representativeness of data and of the research you're doing, and I think that's kind of always stuck with me in trying to not pigeonhole the data, the analytics, the questions you're asking, and one particular situation in my more recent past is when working with FEMA and trying to respond to executive order. I'm trying to remember the number. I think it's 13526. I think those are the right numbers. They might be in different order, but it was basically challenging all of the federal agencies to quantify their the equity and how they're delivering programs to citizens, as well as representation in their own workforce. So trying to come up with some of those questions within a region of FEMA was an eye-opening experience as well.
Oh, thanks. And I can imagine FEMA is such a monolith organization, and you're doing your best, but it needs to be incorporated somehow. That's great. Clinton, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. This is a really good question, I think. So after many years of working in spaces where Black people and other people of color were in the building, but not really in the room, whether that room was technology or decision making, I then came to Esri, where I was 100% of the Black people in the building. And this was during another period of time when we were basically being bombarded with videos of Black people being brutalized or killed by our country's public safety officers. And guess what? We weren't being bombarded with that imagery. Most of the people that I worked around seemed to have no idea or no empathy for what was happening. Now, at the same time, I was working with cities and counties, or big cities and counties with big cities, all of which were asking for our help using GIS to address issues of racial equity and social justice. I mean, some of them were almost commercials, for our technology. They would say things like, I recently started working here, and we know that our policies are creating disparities for people based on race and income and other factors. And we know that you all have geospatial data that can help us, do something about it. Help us find the neighborhoods and the ways in which our policies are creating disparities for people. And all too often, I was simultaneously the only Black person in GIS in that room and the only GIS person engaging in the conversation, whether it was the GIS team that worked for that organization or our own. So it became important to me to really do something about that.
Oh, it's unfortunate that you had these crises that came together, but it was a spark, I think, and you're taking it forward. So I have some students in mind that I'm going to connect to North Star, and I know your network is just going to grow. So thank you for your efforts, from the academic perspective and what your work is doing. Matt, you want to say a few words?
Yeah. So as a demographer, I never critically engaged with demography itself until I was really confronted with how the data systems that demography sort of sets up can reinforce various systems of oppression. And the time when it really clicked with me was looking at the question in the 1970 census about head of household. And the only option was head of household or wife. It was literally impossible for a woman to be a head of a household in the 1970 census. And that sort of the way that those data guardrails, I guess, that force people into specific categories. I now think about that in almost all of my work and thinking about how is my own work either reinforcing those systems or working to sort of maybe in some ways push against them at the same time. So that was when it was really eye-opening, and I was like, whoa, wait a minute, you can't choose anything, literally anything else.
Right. I remember you saying that there are people who do these census forms and there's no box for them at all for their self-identity. So I think we're maybe moving towards something a little better, but we're not there yet. So we're really coming up to your lunch hour, and I appreciate that everybody, I sent the questions out yesterday and I know you prepared to answer them, but why don't we take the last minute or two if any of you have a burning statement you'd like to make, or if there's a burning question in the audience, we could take it. I can't see the audience, so maybe you could see if there's a hand up or
We have a
Is that right? You do have a
Thank you.
question?
Yeah, there's a question.
Great, thanks.
Is this on? Okay, this is on. Thank you. I really love this panel and this plenary. Thank you so much. And Tristan, I'll just say that working with you on that paper was the best experience I've had working on a paper. It was wonderful. I really liked Sam's point about the user. We focus on the user and user interface and user experience, but the makers, that has to be something to be considered as well. And I think Clinton's video made that point as well in terms of workforce, diversifying the workforce is going to be so critical. So that led me to a question from Matt, because I learned so much from Matt's presentation about the demography of our country and the aging of our coastline. I wondered, Matt, I hope that we're moving towards a diversification of the cartography GIS workforce, but do you think that workforce is aging, will age as well? Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Thank you. Yes. When I was at the, just as an example, the one federal agency that should, well, maybe not the only one, but one of the ones that should be most prepared for aging would be the Census Bureau, which is the largest concentration of demographers in the federal government. And yet, when I was at the Census Bureau about a decade ago, over 40% of their workforce were still were boomers and approaching retirement ages, and they still hadn't quite fully prepared. So, yeah, I don't know if but just judging on that, I doubt the cartography is ready for the aging tsunami as well. To put it mildly, because very few organizations, institutions, disciplines, and so on are really positioned for it.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Did any of the other panelists want to comment on that? I know you're working directly trying to improve that, Clinton.
Yeah, a lot of us are definitely trying to get the folks in the industry, people who are hiring, to think about the, we don't have to make up anything new, any new, great practices for inclusive hiring. There are a lot of great practices out there, but reaching out to historically Black colleges and universities, reaching out to students in low-income communities and communities of color, and schools serving predominantly communities of color, getting people early and interested in geography early. And I always think about, once someone taught me about GIS or told me about GIS, I wanted to learn about GIS a little bit more. Very often the subject matter was focused on things that I could not really imagine. Volcanoes, things that didn't matter in my life growing up. And I always wonder, like, what would that look like for someone in high school or the high school age Clinton? Did I miss geography and GIS because it wasn't being showed to me in a way that would engage me? So I think we got to start thinking about how we communicate the importance of value of geography to a broader audience. Now, we're all bringing our passions to the work that we do, and when we think about what excites us about GIS and geography, that shows up in the ways in which we promote it. So we need to tap into broader perspectives today, so we're promoting geography as an opportunity, career opportunity, and an opportunity to have impact to younger people from diverse backgrounds.
Great. Yes. My first exercise in my class is, because it's image understanding, is looking, I say, pick your favorite place. It could be where you grew up or where your vacation, but something and find imagery and tell us about it. So I really do try to personalize that, and then expand out geographically from there. Well, we're into your lunch hour, your time. So I guess we'll end this panel discussion, and I hate to cut it short. It's been fantastic. I've learned a lot, and I hope everybody has enjoyed it. So thank you very much for coming, and I'll join you virtually for the rest of the conference. So thank you.
Take care, Marguerite.
Hi, everyone. Before we break for our break instead of our lunch, I just had a couple of announcements. First of all, Amy, where are you? Okay, we'll hold on that. Number two, People are looking for rides to airports and things. There was something that went out last night that allowed you to sign up online to help people get to and from airports and things. So, but if you didn't get into that list, the online sign up sheet, there's one out on the registration desk for you. Also, following our break is a special session in honor of Lynn Ursery. And I think most of the people in this room know how much of an impact he had on our discipline. And I also encourage you to look at the slides that are rotating between sessions, because we've lost a number of really important people, and we want to make sure we remember them. We have a couple sessions, concurrent sessions after lunch, and then we have a closing session from 3 to 4. You won't want to miss that, because we have some really excellent raffle prizes for you. And if people are leaving, that means your chance of winning is better. But we'll also hear about some awards, some acknowledgements. We also have a video and a presentation about ICC 2023, and we'll remind you about how we can help you to get there. And finally, there's an Esri tour, a final Esri tour from 4 to 5. So if you're interested in that, meet in the lobby at 4 o'clock. And now Amy has a very quick thing to do. Let's save it for the end of the Lynn Ursery session. She has some prizes to give out. So go ahead, have your break. We'll see you in less than half an hour, right back in here. This is the only session we'll be in here after the break. Thank you.